You know, a lot of people, dare I say the word? Yeah, I will. A lot of people actually get afraid of end of the year activities. And they really shouldn't, because this is just doing some final reporting. There really isn't a lot of data entry or data manipulation in it. You've already done the hard part. What I've done for this particular chapter is I've opened the product sample file. So if you close all of your company files down, get back to that original QuickBooks window, you can say to open the product and services sample file or the product sample file to kind of get where we're at. The reason I did that is I wanted to make sure we had a wide variety of transactions and things to work with. The file that we worked with throughout the class was a little limited in that area. Well, when people get afraid of doing end-of-the-year stuff, like I said, I'm not sure exactly why. It's all pretty easy. And we're going to start with some end-of-year employment reports. If you don't have employees, you probably don't have to worry about this, but it actually is pretty simple, so you can follow along even if you don't think you'll be using it. We access these, of course, by going to the Employees menu at the top of the screen. And then nicely enough, there is a whole section called Payroll Tax Forms and W-2s. We'll go ahead and give that little flyout that says Process Payroll Forms a click. Unless you have subscribed to some of Intuit's special features and programs, you're only going to have access to the federal form. That's okay, so we'll click OK. Now basically you're going to probably need one of two forms, either the 940, which is the annual federal unemployment FUTA tax return, or a 941, which is your employer's quarterly federal tax return. There may be a couple of other things. And of course, if you have employees, you need to print out their W-2s. And there are some deadlines associated with these, so you need to learn what those are and make sure that you don't miss the deadline. Let's go ahead and select the 940 just as an example. And we'll put in a year. Let's put in 2010. And then we click OK. It's always going to remind us about downloading the latest payroll forms to make sure that we're up to date with everything, because they do change quite a bit and very often. And you saw a whole lot of windows flashing around there for just a second, and then you get your nice little form. It should have almost everything filled out that you need. You really just need to verify it. I can see that it has the EIN number, or the employer identification number, at the top. It takes you through a variety of different questions. If any of these amounts are appropriate, they will already be filled in. And when you get to the bottom of the form, you can click on Next. This is just stepping you through kind of an interview process. This is where you're actually going to fill in the form itself. The first part was just some questions about it. After you finish this particular interview, by clicking Next as many times as you need to, you'll see at the bottom that you can save and close it. You can save it as a PDF file, and or you can print it for your records. Depending on how you like to store things, one of these will be appropriate. I save everything that I do as a PDF file. That way it's electronic. I don't like having hard copies, so that's usually the button I choose. I'm going to go ahead and click Save and Close. And it tells us the next things we have to do. I'll go ahead and say thank you. Okay, I know if I have a payment, I have to mail it. The next thing that people need to do, but we do have to go back here a little bit, is to the Employees menu. Back to our payroll tax forms and W-2s, because I just want to show you what it's like to go through the W-2 process for employees. It's very similar and very simple. This time we click the bottom option. Again, make sure you have the appropriate tax year filled out. You don't want to send out the wrong information. That makes both the IRS and your employees a bit cranky. Then we'll click OK. And if you don't have any employees, like the sample file doesn't, it will say no employees have been paid in the given year, and you can say OK. If you have had employees who have been paid, it will again simply walk you through each one that you can see. The W-2s and your W-3 will actually print out in multiple copies, because as you probably know, having been an employee, you have several W-2s that you get in the mail. You can buy the W-2 forms in most stationery stores right around the beginning of the year through tax time. I'll go ahead and cancel out of this window and talk about one more thing that you might have to file, and that would be 1099s. If you don't have any employees, but if you have paid any contract labor over a certain amount for the year, then you need to fill out a 1099 for that person. That is, of course, unless they're a corporation. Corporations don't have to have that, but if you had a sole proprietor, say maybe you paid somebody for maintenance or sprinkler repair, one of those types of things. In order to access that, you're going to go to Vendors. And again, they've made it very easy to find. Print 1099s. You can run a report to look at your vendors. You can map accounts if you need to set up your different things. and you can actually run a report as well as print your 1099s. We don't have any that we actually paid enough money to this year, so I'll just close out of this box. After you print all of your forms, after you've run all your checks, after you've made sure that all the money that you've received is all accounted for, you're pretty much ready to close the books. You probably also have had an accountant maybe do kind of a sweep over your company file just to make sure everything looks right. Because remember, closing the books is kind of a final thing. You don't want to go back and make any transactions or changes after that. But actually closing the books is a very simple process. You simply go to the Edit menu and come down to Preferences. In the Accounting category, the very first one on the left-hand side, you'll click Company Preferences, and at the bottom of the screen, you'll see the closing date and the last date the books were closed. In this case, it was the last of last year, which is great. Now we're going to change it to 12/31 of 2011. In this case, I just need to change one digit, so I'll actually just type that one in. And then you do need to create a password. The password is there because you don't want people to be able to open up the company file and make changes, but you do want to make sure that certain people, the administrator and maybe your accountant, can go in and modify those transactions if the need arises. I've gone ahead and kept the same passwords that were in here the first time. Please make sure that you write them down. Since it's about a year between times you come in here, maybe only a quarter, but in any event, a lot of time, you definitely want to remember what the password is. If you're like me, you have so many passwords running around in your head that if you don't write them down somewhere and keep them secure so nobody can find them, you might forget in the amount of time between closing books. At this point, you just say, OK. Even though that seems fairly simple, that really is all there is to it because you've been doing the work all along. Now you come in, print out some final forms, close the books for this period, and you're pretty much done. The next couple of things we're going to do are more about account maintenance rather than the accounting itself.